Welcome, everyone, to the Q&A session for our upcoming course, The Matrix of Magic, the 8-week journey to unlock the spiritual dimensions of your being with meditation and botanical medicine. I'm Lisa Bonise, and I'm really excited about this Q&A conversation for the Shift Network, where we'll explore the teachings of David Crowe and address questions about his upcoming 8-week course, The Matrix of Magic, which begins Wednesday, February 27th. Later, I'll explain how you can participate in the course, even if you can't attend the live sessions. But first, I want to introduce our guest. David Crowe is one of the world's foremost experts and leading speakers in the field of botanical medicine and grassroots healthcare. He's a master herbalist, aromatherapist, and acupuncturist with over 30 years of experience, and he's an expert in the Ayurvedic and Chinese medical systems. David has presented his vision of grassroots healthcare preservation of botanical medicines and the use of plants for ecological restoration to hundreds of audiences, ranging from small private groups to conferences and lecture halls to a panel discussion with the Dalai Lama, broadcast internationally to millions of viewers. His book, In Search of the Medicine Buddha, has been translated into 3 foreign editions. And in a little while, we're going to open up for your questions. But first, I want to welcome David, who's going to lead us in an opening meditation. Welcome, David. It's always such a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you, Lisa. Likewise, a pleasure. Well, we have so many questions that have come in, and thank you to everybody for sending these. And yes, we will do an opening meditation, but I think that I would like to answer one basic question here first. And then when we do the meditation, it'll have a little more context. So there are always questions from students who have taken my other courses, and they always want to know the difference between this new course and the old course. And this will always be a concern with new material and how much we have covered before or not covered. And so the question is very specific. How is this different from the last course, combining herbs and oils? And that was the last course that I presented, combining herbs and essential oils, a home pharmacy course. And so thank you for asking that. And the answer is very simple. The last course was really medical. It was a course literally about combining herbs and essential oils. And it was subtitled A Home Pharmacy Course. And its focus was really, what herbs do we take for common respiratory conditions? What herbs do we take for common digestive conditions and so forth? And there was virtually no emphasis on meditation or the classical teachings of Asian medicine, which I like to call the inner spiritual dimension. And that's what this course is about. This course is about the inner spiritual dimensions of classical Asian medicine. Now, that means that there is emphasis on herbs and oils, but it is not a home pharmacy course. In other words, this course is not about what herb do you take for this condition. That doesn't mean that you won't get benefits. It doesn't mean that you won't learn a lot about herbs and essential oils and how to use them for various kinds of conditions. It's just it's a very different focus. And so along these lines, people who have taken earlier courses from me might be wondering the same thing, because in the earlier courses, we actually did get into some discussion about the inner spiritual dimension. And so people who might have taken the advanced herbal course are familiar with some of the concepts that we're going to be studying in this course, but there's a primary difference. The primary difference in all the previous courses has been really that we've been talking about the therapeutic benefits and applications and uses of herbs and essential oils, but we've been using some of the classical Asian language and the concepts to describe how they work. The major difference with this course is that we're actually studying the body. We're actually studying the body through meditation. And we're studying the body through meditation using the language of classical Asian medicine. And so that's the primary difference. And I think one of the best ways to actually introduce it now officially to tell you and show you, illustrate what is meant exactly by the matrix of magic and why is this important and what is different about it from other courses. And if you have taken other courses, how to understand this one and what benefits you could get from learning this material. And for those of you who haven't taken anything from me before, it's just a good general introduction to how I think and the things that are interesting to me. So one of the first questions that came in is directly related to this, other than the difference in the course. And that is, you say that the prana of the heart is the link between spirit and matter. What does that mean? Well, that's a statement that I made in the introductory call. And those of you who are on the introductory call probably heard that and probably were wondering about it also. So thank you for sending that in. And let's start first with a basic question. What is prana? Well, we talked about that in the intro call, and a very simple definition is life force. Now, we actually spend a full module just talking about that particular term and studying it in meditation and talking about what herbs and oils we can use to help us understand prana and help us understand the nature of prana in the herbs and the oils, and how to make us more aware of our own prana at different levels and the different levels of prana and so forth. And that module, module 2, is then followed by a module on Qi, which is the same, but it's from a different context. It's from the inner spiritual dimensions and classical Asian teachings of Chinese medicine and Qigong, as opposed to Ayurvedic medicine and Tantra. So prana is life force, but it has a lot of meaning and it has a lot of applications, and it's a very big subject. And so we're going to spend a couple hours in 2 modules studying prana and meditating on it and learning how it works, and then learn more about it when we talk about it in the context of Qi. Now, let's go back to this question. The prana of the heart is the link between spirit and matter. Well, that sounds like a very interesting statement. I guess I said that, but let's explore what this actually means. So normally I just spend time answering questions, but in this context, I think it'd be really good to actually demonstrate and illustrate what we're going to be doing. So if you would join me for a very simple meditation, and this meditation studies what we can call the 7 levels of heart prana. Now, that's not all there is to prana, and that's not all there is to the heart, and that's not all there is to the heart prana, but it's a complete system of studying ourselves at this particular spiritual dimension of the body. So the way that we can study the heart prana is that we can take the thumb of one hand and place it on the radial artery of the wrist of the opposite hand and press down, and you will feel the heartbeat. So we're going to do a meditation that is actually listening to our own heart. And this is important for a lot of reasons, which I will explain as we go along here. So if you could just make yourself comfortable, press the thumb against the radial artery of the opposite wrist. And if you don't mind, I'm just going to close my eyes and guide you through this. So first, notice that there is a pulse. If you are not finding it right away, move the thumb around a little bit. And I'm assuming that everybody here has a pulse. So notice that the heart is beating. This is extremely important. It's extremely important because it tells us a lot of things about ourselves. And it also gives us a lot of ways that we can study the inner dimensions, the spiritual dimensions of the body and the mind. So notice that the heart is beating simply there at the radial artery of the wrist. Now, this is just the first level of this meditation, but already it tells us a lot, because that heartbeat is actually the manifestation of a life force, and we can call that the prana. And specifically, we can call it the prana of the heart. And there are many kinds of prana in the body, and this is a specific level of prana that is described in Ayurvedic medicine and in many of the tantric meditations. So now, the second level is something we cannot feel, but it is medically and scientifically accurate, and that is that before every pulsation of the heart, there's a spark of bioelectrical current that passes across the heart muscle. Now, bioelectrical current is a form of prana. It's one of the best ways to actually describe what is prana if you were talking to a doctor. Bioelectrical current. So now, as you are listening and feeling the heartbeat, bring your attention and connect it, not just at the wrist, but also in the chest. Try to get a sense of, before every pulsation, there's a spark of bioelectrical current. And that spark is what sets the pulse wave into motion. And that spark is a form of prana. Now, let's just follow this upstream and follow the river of the prana back to its source. Because the heartbeat is the final manifestation, it's the external form of the prana. Where does this spark come from? It's partly originating in the heart itself, but it is rooted in the brain, in the centers that control the biorhythms. And so there is a flow of electrical current, nerve current, that is coming from the brain through the spinal cord into the heart. And that is connected. And this is also known in Ayurvedic and Chinese medicine, and there's a name for it. This is a specific level of pranavata, as it said. So this is a level of prana that is diagnosed and treated, and we can meditate on it. So now we're holding in our mind three simultaneous levels. One is we are feeling the external pulsation at the wrist. We are also noticing that before each pulsation, that there is a spark of bioelectrical current in the heart itself. And now we are also noticing that that flow of prana into the heart is actually coming all the way through the spinal column from the brain. Now that represents a complete system. And that's all completely accurate medically. There's nothing esoteric about it at all. We're just paying attention to something that's happening every single heartbeat. We generally don't connect the external pulsation with the brain and the deeper nerve current, however. So just listening at this level is bringing our attention into a much deeper level of our matrix of the body, which is a container of energies and elements. Now we go to an esoteric level. And this is a level that is actually described all over the world by different traditional cultures. And it's described very clearly in Tantra and in Qigong and in Ayurvedic medicine and Chinese medicine as well. There's actually an acupuncture point for it. And that's at the top of the head. It is said that at the top of the head that there is a very subtle opening of energy, for energy, where energy comes in. Energy comes in especially at the time of birth, and energy goes out at the time of death. And the energy is connected throughout our life. This is a subtle form of prana. Now, it has been described in different ways in the mystical tradition, but apparently this subtle form of prana is actually coming from the mind of the universe. And we don't know much about it because we don't study it, and we don't really understand it. But apparently it's there because a lot of people who are very wise and who have studied it very deeply have told us about it. So I'm just offering this as something for all of us to consider. So now we have 4 levels. Let's review. We feel the heart beating at the wrist. We know that this is coming from a pulsation of bioelectrical current in the heart. We know that this is flowing down through the brain, through the central channel, which is a major object of contemplation in tantric practices. And we now know that there's a connection to a very subtle level of prana that's flowing into the brain, and therefore it's part of our heart as well. It's part of this pulsation, that there's a very subtle aspect of our consciousness. Perhaps it's underneath our thoughts, or perhaps it's in our karma or our destiny. There's a lot of possibilities for how it is, but apparently in the mystical traditions, this is also something that has to do with the larger intelligence of the universe. The Sufis say, for example, that God, that universal intelligence, actually sends a spark to cause a pulsation in the heart of each being. So we're connected to that. That's a mystical description. Now let's go to the 5th level. The 5th level is we feel the entire body. And we feel the entire system of the prana from the top of the head into the brain, down through the central channel of the spine, into the heart itself, into the bioelectrical current that beats the heart, and then it pulsates outward through the limbs into the wrist, and we can feel all of that. And we can feel the pulsation throughout the entire body. And so that's a container. The body is a container, and it's a container of this subtle energy, and it is pulsating the elements of the body. And specifically, the heart prana is pulsating the prana and the element of water. And so the heart prana is pumping the blood. It's as simple as that. So that's one way that we can feel the interface then, to answer this question specifically, between spirit and body. Now let's look at the 6th level. This is actually known by science, unlike the subtle prana of the crown chakra, as it were. And this is an electromagnetic field that is given off every time the heart pulsates. This is what is measured clinically. Okay? If you go to see a cardiologist, that's what they can test in an EKG. So how does this manifest? Well, it's actually a field of electrical energy that's radiating from the heart as a sphere of energy outside the body. And apparently there's all of these things that science is now catching up on, that the mystics of the past and ordinary people knew and know, and that is that the quality of our thoughts and feelings is conveyed to others through this field of energy. So now let's review all 6. And that is, we feel the pulsation of the heart at the wrist. And we feel that this is the result of a spark of bioelectrical current coming from the heart itself, pulsating outward. And then we can feel that this is actually a flow of energy from the brain, bioelectrical current, neurologically. And then we can feel that this is actually linked to a very subtle energy of the universe. And then we can encompass the entire body, the matrix of elements and energies in our consciousness, to feel the entire thing. And then we can include this electromagnetic energy that's radiating from the chest. And those are the 6 levels. And so now what is the 7th level? The 7th level is actually not another level. It's actually how we relate to all of this. And that is, we just leave it alone. We don't disturb it. We listen to it. And this is the hardest part about all of this, because what we're listening to is the intelligence of the universe. We're listening to the intelligence of what created us. We're listening to the intelligence of nature inside of us. And I'll just speak for myself that a lot of my attention day after day is not paying attention to this. It's paying attention to externalities of life. And those externalities of life require a lot of attention. And furthermore, they require a lot of thought. And that requires many times a lot of emotional processing. And all of that has a tendency to kind of obscure what's going on all the time inside of us. Natural medicine is fundamentally nothing more than helping us relax so that nature can heal us. And so that's what we do. We listen to the pulsation at the wrist. We understand that it comes from a spark in the heart. We understand that it comes through the central channel. We understand that there's deep, subtle level to this. We can perceive the entire thing through the entire body. We feel that it's radiating electromagnetically. And then we can just listen to it and just leave it alone for a little bit. And in yoga, that's called shavasana, corpse pose. And we can do that sitting up. It means that the activity of the mind, which is mostly the activity of the ego, is quiet for a little while. Okay, so now we can take a deep breath and we can stretch. And I'll just mention that that is what this course is about. It's about studying these magical qualities, actually, because in my mind, we just did something that was totally normal. It's completely accessible. There isn't anything mysterious about it at all. And yet it's totally miraculous that it's happening inside of us all the time. And it's even more miraculous that we pay so little attention to it. And that is what gives us life constantly. And if it didn't give us life, we wouldn't be able to actually be here to think about it. So thank you for doing that little meditation. And let's go on to some good questions. Now we can get into our question and answer session, but I think that should demonstrate fairly comprehensively for everybody the difference of what this course is about. Let me add one important piece of information here. Where do the herbs and the essential oils come in? Well, there are many ways that we can use herbs and essential oils to actually study what we just studied. And there are a lot of herbs and essential oils that can actually benefit all of these levels of prana that we just studied. So rather than talking about treating hypertension or high cholesterol or using these particular herbs for this particular therapeutic benefit or this medical situation, which is what we did in the herb courses, or how to use this particular essential oil to calm the prana of the heart for relaxation purposes, which we did in the essential oil courses, or how can we combine herbs and essential oils for calming this level of prana or strengthening or balancing this level of prana in the heart, which of course is directly related to anxiety and depression and heart problems and circulatory problems. There are medical applications of this type of meditation, and there are also herbs and oils that are good for this level of prana, the heart prana, which answers that particular question. Now, fully, that's the link between spirit and matter. It's the heart prana. So what do we do with this in terms of the specific application of herbs and oils? Well, there are herbs we can take both before, during, and after this meditation that will actually increase our understanding and the depth of perception. There are herbs that we could take, even just a few drops with some warm water right before we do this meditation, and it will actually increase our awareness and understanding, the depth of our concentration and sensitivity to this level of prana. And furthermore, we can bring in some really simple essential oils that have a direct effect immediately on the heart prana. And you could probably think of a few. You could put a couple drops of lavender and just inhale it, and it will have an immediate calmative effect on this level of prana in the heart. Or perhaps rose oil, or perhaps sandalwood oil. The spiritual oils contact that level of prana directly. And that will also help you understand how the herbs and the essential oils work at this level, the more that we spend time feeling this level of prana. All right, here's a very good question. What is the most common form of Qi stagnation? Good question. This is both partly Chinese medicine. It's there in Ayurvedic medicine also. It's also left over from my introductory call. There's actually a lot of forms of Qi stagnation, and the most common form is liver Qi stagnation. And we're going to study liver Qi stagnation in Module 3 about the Qi. There's lots of different types of Qi. Every organ has a Qi. Every type of Qi behaves differently. And this is what we learn how to treat in Chinese medicine with acupuncture and herbs. And we can also bring in essential oils. And the more we understand about how our Qi is behaving or misbehaving, the better we can treat it. And also the better we can prevent problems. And liver Qi stagnation is an excellent example of something we can use preventively. Liver Qi stagnation is when you get chronic tension and frustration. PMS has a description in Chinese medicine. The primary description of PMS in Chinese medicine is liver Qi stagnation, but everybody gets PMS at some point in some form. And many times it goes on for a very long time, and it turns into anxiety and depression, which are more advanced forms of liver Qi stagnation. But liver Qi stagnation has a whole range of manifestations, and there are so many things we can do to help it. Just doing Qigong, for example, to circulate the Qi. Now, the more awareness we have of whether the Qi is flowing or becoming stagnant, the more effectively we can prevent it from doing so, from becoming stagnant, and the more effectively we know how to circulate it. And that can just be through simple relaxation and meditation, as we're doing, or it can be in conjunction with herbs, which are highly effective for liver Qi stagnation and all kinds of Qi stagnation, and essential oils also. Another very common example, digestive Qi. So when we have gas and bloating, that's stagnation of Qi in the intestine. And anything that involves cramping or pain, there is also stagnation of Qi there as well. So menstrual cramp, uterine pain, any kind of muscular tension, musculoskeletal pain, there is Qi stagnation. All right, let's see if I can squeeze in one more question here before turning this back to Lisa. And this is a very, very good question. And thank you for sending this in. How can rejuvenating the body help overcome karmic obstacles? Somebody caught this in my intro call again. This is good. Well, first of all, let me ask, well, what are karmic obstacles? Well, karmic obstacles, I would break it down into different levels. We have individual karmic obstacles and we have collective karmic obstacles. And it's important to understand that there is a difference, because a lot of times things that we are facing are the result of conditions around us that are being created collectively. That's kind of the theme of this time of life in human history, is there are so many things that we're connected to that we're influenced by and that are difficult for us to get away from or to solve. We're all very much affected by collective karma and collective karmic obstacles. But then there are those that are of our own making, clearly. So I'll just give a very short, simple example of something that has to do with our own making. And that would be what happens when people fall into addictions, basically. So when people fall into addictions, there's a repetitious behavior. And one of the best ways to describe karma is cause and effect. And so you drink too much alcohol, That's the cause. The next day you feel a certain way. That's the effect. Well, you do it day after day. Eventually what happens is that it starts to have a big imprint on the body and the mind. And then it starts to imprint your job. And then it starts to have a big impact on your family and then your finances. And then pretty soon you're faced with a whole lot of problems. And those problems are obstacles. And they are obstacles in many ways. They are obstacles to good health. They are obstacles to your higher purpose. They are obstacles to a happy family life. And they're all self-created. So that's a good definition of karmic obstacles that really come from ourselves. And the answer, well, how does rejuvenating the body take care of that? That's fairly obvious. Anybody who goes through a detox process is going to get better on all levels. They're going to have a healthier liver. They're going to have a healthier social life. They're going to have a happier marriage. They're going to be better off economically. So these kinds of detoxification processes then show clearly that the link between the conditions of a person's life and their behavior happens through the habits of the body. So we can approach a lot of problems that we have in our life through strengthening ourselves and detoxifying ourselves. And that's also the answer to what do we do about the collective karmas that we're faced with? Well, a lot of questions came in about how can I protect myself from microwaves and the new 5G cell phone towers, and what's the best herb for being a very sensitive person. Many, many medical questions came in that are kind of in this context. What do we do to protect ourselves from the conditions of the world? How do we remove obstacles that are being imposed upon us that we don't really want, that we're not directly responsible for creating? And the answer is the same, that it has to be done through our own body. It has to be done through our own vitality. And that's one of the important things to understand about prana and Qi and all the other things we're going to be covering in this course, is that all of these things empower us energetically and they empower us immunologically. And just that simple heart meditation that we did can empower us in many, many ways, because it can actually make us more sensitive and aware of our boundary energetically. Several questions came in about that, so I can answer those all at once and say, the more we understand our own heart prana, the more we can protect ourselves from other people's energies, because we're centered in the immunological power of our own prana. Okay. I hope that's helpful. And Lisa, it looks like I should turn this back to you for a few words.
Yeah, just for a quick second, I just want to make sure that everyone who's just joining us knows what they're watching. We're here with David Crowe, learning about his upcoming course, The Matrix of Magic, which begins Wednesday, February 27th. And you can log on to matrixofmagic.com for all the details and to register. And I'll be back in 10 minutes or so to give you a little bit more information about the course. In the meantime, David, go for it. I'm just fascinated by everything you have to say.
Thank you. All right, here's another question that's relevant to this course and to everybody. You talked about the prana of water. I don't drink tap water. I only drink bottled spring water, but I honestly don't know if that's any better. For all I know, it comes out of a hose in a factory somewhere. How can we know if the water we're drinking has healthy prana? Well, that's a good question. And the reason that I'll take a minute is because it points to another aspect of this course, and that is that we're not just talking about prana, and we're not just talking about Qi, we're also talking about the 5 elements. In Ayurvedic language, earth, water, fire, air, space. And now I can give you a good definition of the matrix of magic. And that is that the body is a container of 5 elements. The earth element comes in as food that circulates around as nutrition and builds us up. Water comes in as the liquids that we drink. Sunlight comes in with our food as solar energy that the plants have photosynthesized that is now being combusted in ourselves. That's why we have warmth in the body. We're solar powered beings. And every time we breathe, we are having gaseous exchange where the atmosphere is coming in, moving around, and then going back out. So through these four elements, we are deeply, intimately in biological union all the time. And the body is a container. That's one of the definitions of matrix. It's a container, it's a space that holds all of this and circulates through channels of space. And so what goes into this matrix is very important. And the elements carry certain kinds of prana into our body. And we should be mindful about the kind of prana that we put in. And that's why high quality food and high quality water make a very big difference with our health. Now, the simple answer is there's two primary ways we can tell if water has good prana. One is it tastes good, and the other is that it hydrates. And so I know from traveling a lot and not having a lot of choices, there's a lot of water out there that doesn't taste good and it doesn't hydrate. And that's the purpose of water. And if it doesn't taste good, it probably has some toxic prana in it. And that starts to affect our prana. And it should taste sweet and very light and clean. And a lot of water doesn't. And if it doesn't give us a hydrating effect, then that's a real concern for our health as well. Okay, let's look at another one. That's a very good question, and thank you. So here's another good one. This is actually a question that sums up several people's concerns here about this. Your class sounds fascinating, but I have ADHD, and I don't know if I can focus enough to learn all the material. Do you have any plant suggestions to quiet my mind so I can be more present? I'd love to take your course. Well, I think the first question I would have is, did you find the little heart meditation difficult? That's the level of meditation we're going to be doing. We're not going to be doing a intensive, long, classical yogic type of practice in these modules. I'm going to give you very short meditations, 5 to 10 minutes, guided meditations. And we are paying attention to something that is there. It's not abstract at all. There's nothing abstract about listening to the heartbeat. It's a physical thing. And it gives the mind something substantial to focus on. And what's interesting is that it also allows the mind to start to become more quiet and calm and focused, because it's actually directing the prana of our attention to ourselves. Okay, and this is a problem that a lot of people have with meditation, is that they're given teachings where they don't actually know what to do with the mind, or the mind isn't ready to just abide in emptiness. The mind isn't capable of just becoming quiet. These are very advanced levels of meditation, actually. So paying attention to the body is a lot easier in a lot of ways compared to a lot of teachings that are problematic for people. And I would also just like to mention that just because you have difficulty quieting your mind, that doesn't mean you have ADHD. That's normal. Everybody has difficulty quieting their mind. But that would be my first answer, is that we do a lot of short guided meditations. That can probably help with that. And then I would also say that these types of meditations can actually strengthen our concentration. And furthermore, these are all practices that if you come back to them over and over again, and I will be giving a lot of these practices for everybody to do week by week. There's going to be a lot of homework, what we call deepening practices. And I will be expecting everybody to do these things throughout the week. And the nice thing about it is the more we do them, the easier they get. Furthermore, we're going to be adding herbs and oils to this. And again, this is the basic approach with the herbs and oils. It's not a class on improving our cognitive function. It's not an herbal class or an aromatherapy class. What can I use for my ADHD? But guess what? If we use these kind of guided meditations and mindfulness practices, it's really easy to incorporate some simple herbs that actually strengthen our concentration, that actually have benefits for improving our cognitive function. And it's really easy to use a few essential oils just to breathe them before we do this meditation or while we're doing this meditation. And suddenly we have more brain chi, we have more brain prana. So it's real easy to incorporate herbs and oils in a way that we can actually feel the benefit for enhancing concentration, like immediately. And noticing that, okay, I'm starting this meditation, my mind is kind of wandering, and now I'm going to breathe a little bit of this rosemary essential oil, and suddenly I feel really present and alert. That's the beauty of meditating with herbs and oils also. And that's the beauty of bringing them in to address specific kinds of function. So I mentioned rosemary oil, but there's lots of other essential oils and there's lots of herbs. And to help concentration, we think of those that are going to be strengthening the prana of the brain. All right. So Lisa, should I do a couple more or do we need to pause?
Let me go ahead and talk about the course for just a couple minutes here, and then we can go on. It's about that time, because we do have time for a few more questions. But before we take those, I want to give a few details about the course. Again, it's called The Matrix of Magic, and this is going to be just a fascinating 8-week journey under David's expert guidance where you'll discover a complete system of study and practices based on millennia-old lineages of medicine, meditation, and mysticism. And the 8-week course takes place on Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Pacific, starting Wednesday, February 27th. And if you can't join us live, that's fine. You won't miss any of the teachings. You will receive audio recordings, transcripts, and all course handouts on your course homepage. And also, I'd like to remind you that the Shift Network offers a no-risk money-back guarantee on all of our courses, giving you a full 2 weeks until March 13th in this case to make sure that it's a good fit. We want you to be happy. And as an added option, all participants are welcome to connect in a private Facebook community group so you can stay connected with one another. Also, everyone who registers receives the Matrix of Magic bonus collection. First, you'll receive the top 10 Plant Medicine Summit recordings from the Plant Medicine Summit from 2018. And you'll also receive an audio course by David Crowe entitled The Healing Power of Plants and Biological Unity. And when you register by midnight Pacific on Friday, February 22nd, you'll receive an extra bonus gift, and that is 3 recorded sessions with David Crowe from the Winter of Wellness Summit. So, David, before we get back into the questions, what are you most looking forward to sharing in your upcoming course?
Just this. It's the greatest pleasure to tell people about things like the 7 levels of the heart prana. And this course is just about these teachings. So, as I mentioned the term, the inner spiritual dimensions of classical Asian medicine. I think this is a really important and unexplored and very rich vein of spiritual practice, actually. And what's interesting is that these teachings, they're found in classical Asian medicine. And when I say classical Asian medicine, I mean Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, and Tibetan medicine. Those are the 3 systems we're going to be drawing from. But what we find is that those medical systems are totally interconnected in terms of their concepts and philosophy and background with the spiritual traditions of the cultures that they came from. And so therefore, prana is fundamental to Ayurveda, but it's fundamental to Tantra. And Qi is fundamental to Chinese medicine, but it's fundamental to Qigong. And the teachings of the 5 elements are fundamental to all these systems, but they are also one of the primary systems of meditation in classical Buddhist Vipassana, for example. So when the medical systems were developing, they were strongly influenced by the spiritual traditions and vice versa. I think this is really valuable to consider because up to now they have been presented fairly separately. If you study Ayurvedic or Chinese medicine, the spiritual dimensions of what you're learning are not really explored very much. The implications of them are not given to you. And on the other hand, if you are doing various types of spiritual practices, Qigong, or various types of meditational lineages such as Vipassana or various types of tantric practices and so forth, the physiological side of it that is contained in the medical teachings and the information about how to actually work with herbs to strengthen that and enhance those practices is not given either, you see. So this is a synthesis, bringing back together what was originally very closely connected in the old cultures. So that's what I'm looking forward to. And I'm looking forward to this because it's a very personal expression for me, actually, because in my mind, this is a very straightforward way of understanding spirituality. So if I was going to describe prana, I would say that it's life force. And that life force is manifesting from the cosmos through our individual mind stream, into our individual incarnation, through our individual karma and our life purpose, in the body, every moment. And if we know how to contact this deeper spiritual dimension of life and awareness that's all around us, that gets us out of all kinds of problems talking about God, and all kinds of problems about talking about this religion or that religion. It's a living, ecological, biological, non-denominational, intertribal, non-sectarian way of feeling directly, perceiving directly in our own sense organs, every moment, creation unfolding. And I think that's deeply spiritual. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
All right, terrific. Thank you so much for that. Well, we've still got a few questions waiting for us. So if you want to go ahead and get back to the list and spend the next, we've got about 10 more minutes or so. Go ahead.
Nice. Okay, good. Well, thank you. So here's a couple questions, and I will cover both of these actually because they're closely related. We can kind of lump these together. So one is, I've used various plants to alter my consciousness in the past, but I've grown out of the desire to trip. Will the plants you'll be teaching about bring about altered, raised consciousness without disconnecting from reality? Good question. So this has a lot to do with using the entheogenic plants in somebody's past history, and entheogenic plants are very, very important in some people's spiritual path. It can help bring about a great transformation, breakthroughs emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, but it's difficult to do those things in everyday life. And a lot of people find great value in then how to integrate it and how to move on. So this is closely related to the next question. What do you recommend for the beginning journey of the healing process of the body and spirit connection? They're fairly closely related questions, actually. So we're going to be using a combination of meditation, herbs, and oils to enhance consciousness. And I think that from the simple meditation that I gave and a little follow-up, that you should have a pretty good sense that this is not about suddenly going from 6% brain capacity to 100% when we light up all of our neurons with ayahuasca. And reality just melts away and we're in a different mythological, cosmological dimension. And then we're not. It's not about that at all. That's very valuable. But what this is about is what I just described. It's about the fact that the heart is beating. And that means something. It means something spiritually. It's not just about blood pressure. It means that we can actually perceive the length of our lifespan. It means that at a certain point, the heart started beating. And it means at a certain point, it's going to end. And that level of deep spiritual contemplation is available to us all the time. And all we have to do is put the thumb on the wrist, and we can start to perceive that the pulse is a river, and it had a beginning, and it will have an end. And it came from somewhere, and most likely it's going to go somewhere else. And maybe we should just pay attention to that. And is that going to give us all kinds of psychedelic phenomena? No. Will it give us spiritual wisdom? Yes. So this course is really just about examining what is. as opposed to dramatically altering our consciousness. Now, will that alter our consciousness? Yes. Will it do it dramatically? No. As a matter of fact, our consciousness is pretty hard to alter. Our consciousness is pretty fixated in habits and habits of perception, especially. That's why we need really strong entheogenic ceremonies to really shake us out of that habit. But what happens if we listen to the heartbeat? And here's where I can reveal my qualifications about that particular meditation. I've been doing that very simple meditation of listening to the heart for years and years. That means that I have listened to millions and millions of my own heart's pulsation. And I imagine that that's a little bit unique in the world. Now, what can I tell you that that has done for me? Well, I'm not going to make any claims about it other than I've just done it. And that means that I have spent a certain amount of time listening to that level of myself. That's all it means. It doesn't mean anything else. And I will just present this as a teaching in the same vein as if you were doing any kind of meditation for an extended period of time. Just the fact that you are focusing on something is going to change you. And just the fact that you are going to be focusing on something repetitive, whether it's a mantra or whether it's a visualization of a deity or body scanning or raising metta, compassion, or bhakti, or whatever your spiritual calling is, the more you do it, the more it's going to infuse your being. And that's all I can say about it. It's a gradual path, but it tends to change us at a deeper level. So I hope that's helpful. And that also answers the next question, which was, what do you recommend for the beginning journey of the healing process of the body and spirit connection? Well, what's really important here, the term connection, body and spirit connection. And the important thing about these practices is that they're all body-based. They are all based on bringing the attention back to our body. They are all based on bringing the awareness into subtle dimensions and subtle energies and subtle elements that are happening. And they're always there. And the question is, well, where is our spirit and why is it disconnected from the body? Well, there's a lot of reasons for that, but mostly what it has to do with is that our attention has gotten diverted somewhere, whether it's through a shock or a trauma or just daily preoccupation with external affairs or, whatever it is, the problems that are in life. And we just have to bring our attention back to the body itself. So spirit is a very profound topic, and it's actually going to be the subject of an entire module. And we find in Chinese medicine a very deep explanation of what spirit actually is. And what's interesting is that we just did a practice that's directly related to connecting our spirit back. And that's because in Chinese medicine, which is where that meditation came from, my own interpretation of Chinese medicine. But all of those teachings, kind of synthesis of Chinese medicine and Ayurvedic medicine and modern medicine also, were in those 7 levels of the heart prana. Now, the heart in Chinese medicine is said very specifically to be the abode, the residence of the spirit. And there's an entire branch of medicine dedicated to diagnosing the health and the well-being and the brightness or the dullness, the uplifted luminosity or the depressed darkness of the spirit, the agitation of the spirit, and so forth, the scattering of the spirit. Okay, there's an entire branch of medicine in Ayurveda just dedicated to diagnosing and treating the spirit. So we can go to classical Chinese medicine, we can get a lot of information about the health of the spirit, and it's not an esoteric concept. We're taught actual physical manifestation, actual medical conditions that can then be linked to actual treatments, therapies, herbs, and essential oils for treating the spirit. But I just gave you the clue or the introduction to that particular module, which is we find the spirit in the heart. And so that's the short answer. The best place to reconnect the spirit and the body is to listen to the heart and to listen to the heartbeat. But can we reconnect spirit to the body by listening to the breath, feeling the breath, feeling the warmth of the body? Yes. What happens? If we pay attention to the breath, we begin to dissolve the boundaries of the sense of self. The perception of the body being a separate thing begins to gradually dissolve, and we can actually feel ourselves breathing with everything, and that's biologically correct. We're not noticing it because we feel like we're inside this container, but the container is totally connected to everything else through the breath. And if we pay attention to that, we can feel that interconnectedness, and that's a spiritual experience. That helps reconnect the spirit back in, and another aspect of spirit is breath. So by paying attention to the breath, we're integrating awareness, breath, spirit, and body. And we can also do that with sunlight. We feel the warmth of the body. We can actually feel that we are solar powered. These are all things we can feel. I know it sounds very esoteric. It's extremely simple, and it's very, very profound to actually go into those levels of awareness that are inherent in all of us. These are not complicated esoteric things. These are just basic fundamental realities that we're not paying attention to all the time. All right, let me squeeze in one more here. And this is a question that's very closely related to all of these other topics. And several people ask this in different ways. Can you feel a shift happening with someone else, within someone else, or is it within you? If you feel you are connected with them. I know I am an empath and highly sensitive. Okay, so what you're talking about here is being able to feel other people's energies. And so I already mentioned that there is a kind of immunity that we can develop energetically. And this is very, very important because the more we study ourselves inwardly through contemplation, the more we become aware of our own energy, and the more empathic we get, but the stronger our resilience becomes. It's a very interesting paradox where we become more sensitive and yet we become stronger to other people's, to being able to resist other people's energies. So this is important. I'll just conclude with this. Why is this important to have these energetic boundaries? Because the energetic boundaries are not just about other people. The energetic boundaries are also about the environment. They're about living in the city. They're about what kind of food do we eat. We want energetic boundaries to keep out all kinds of environmental toxins, or we need strong vitality to be able to process them. Okay, so we need immune energy and energy protection, not just against things like the microwaves, but we need to protect ourselves frequently from ourselves as well. We need to protect ourselves from our moods and from our feelings and our own sensitivity. So we need to be sensitive, but we need to be strong. And the path that I have found that is the best way to do this is actually through spiritual practice. And spiritual practice means different forms of meditation, qigong, pranayama, yoga, all the things that people do. And what I'm offering here is the synthesis of plant medicine into those practices to make them better and stronger and help us understand them at a deeper level. And through that, to help understand the functions of the plant medicines as well. Okay, with that, I will conclude and just turn it back to you, Lisa.
All right. Wow. This has just been a marvelous hour. I always learn so much from you, David. I want to thank our viewers for being with us today and for submitting all of those questions. Once again, the Matrix of Magic starts Wednesday, February 27th, and you can visit matrixofmagic.com to learn more and to register. So before we cut you loose, David, do you have any final words for our viewers?
I just want to say thank you to everybody for your interest in this. It says a lot that you would join us and have an interest in this particular subject. There's so many people in the world that aren't paying any attention to this level of existence at all. So thank you for even just taking the time to do this simple meditation practice and to consider these things. And Lisa, thank you. Always very nice when you host these question and answers. And I'll just say thank you to everybody at the Shift Network also for the opportunity to talk about something that's very close to my heart that I think is very important for everybody. So thank you.
Indeed. Well, thank you back at you. It's always a pleasure hearing from you. And like I said, I learned so much, so I've been taking notes the whole time. Once again, I want to thank everyone who joined us today. On behalf of all of us at the Shift Network, I wish you well and look forward to having you on this course or perhaps another one in the future. Have a great night, everyone.